Welcome to the 2023 Remembrance Day ceremony. I'm Afra.
And I am Sierra.
And we'll be your MCs for today. At Jasper Place High School, November 11th, Remembrance Day, is the day the world remembers the people who have served and continue to serve their countries during war, conflict, and peace. Canada acknowledges the First and Second World Wars, the Korean War, and all conflicts since then in which members of the Canadian forces have participated to give us and others freedom.
We choose to remember because we stand in solidarity with those opposed to armed conflict. Jasper Place High School remembers the lives of those who sacrificed, past, present, and future, aiming for worldwide peace. This ceremony is an acknowledgement of all lost and not a glorification of past or present conflict. We would also like to emphasize that these global conflicts involved all races and religions. We all have a connection and impact from conflict and can learn and benefit from the lessons taught.
It is far too easy to take for granted the freedoms awarded to Canadians on a daily basis. Those freedoms, like freedom of speech, education, movement, and religion, are available to us because of the sacrifices of those before us. We ask that even if it's just for this one day a year, we acknowledge the more than 1.5 million Canadian soldiers, sailors, aircrew, and merchant seamen who sacrificed their freedoms to protect ours and those of others.
To those who have experienced mental, physical, or deathly harm in the service, we are forever in your debt. Specifically, we would want to acknowledge the fallen groups who are not consistently recognized on this day of remembrance.
Thank you to the doctors and nurses who tend to the wounded, the parents who watch their children fight things out of their control, the children who are too young to understand where their family members have gone, the young adults, like ourselves, who are shipped off to fight before they truly even experience life. And lastly, thank you to all the children who had to grow up too fast to support their families during conflict.
To the people who have lost and experienced more than most of us can imagine, we acknowledge your contribution towards the future of peace and prosperity. And again, to those who have volunteered their safety and peace to protect our own, we thank and salute you as we salute those who sacrificed for our freedom in the past. We will never forget. We will always remember.
We would now like to welcome Grace, who is going to read the land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, traditional land of the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, Inuit, and Nakota Sioux. We respect, celebrate, and appreciate the diversity of the many Indigenous tribes that call this place home. It is important that we know and learn about the past experiences of our Indigenous ancestors who used the sacred land to live, gather, and heal. We acknowledge the beauty of the sky above us and the animals who feed us. We appreciate the rivers that flow through our community and the kinship that keeps us all together. It is an honor as a Métis person to be able to call this land my home, along with many other Indigenous peoples.
Today, November 8th, Canadians proudly mark Indigenous Veterans Day. It is a day to commemorate the unique contributions and sacrifices that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples have made serving in the Canadian Armed Forces. From the First World War to the Korean War, and still very much today, Indigenous peoples have volunteered their diverse talent and skills, with more than 12,000 Indigenous women and men answering the call of duty to serve Canada with pride and honor. Even though they donned the same uniform as their comrade in arms and upheld the same oath to defend Canada, at home they were denied the very rights and freedoms they fought to protect. So as we remember their courage and determination during the world's darkest hours, all Canadians should recognize the barriers like racism they overcame just so they could enlist. Many of them served on the front lines, and many of them never returned home. We honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice to defend the freedom we all enjoy today. And we must do better to learn their stories. Stories like that of Private Thomas Godshare, a member of the Anishinaabe First Nations who fought valiantly and died at Vimy Ridge. Or that Indigenous veterans like Mary Grey Eyes, who broke down barriers in the Canadian Armed Forces. Or of Tommy Prince and his legendary bravery. But there are many others whose stories are not as well known. For over a century, thousands of Indigenous peoples have stepped up and contributed their unique skills to the Canadian Armed Forces. They have assumed leadership roles in fields across the Canadian Armed Forces, from engineering to medicine, mechanics to system specialists. Today is a day for all Canadians to seek out their stories, to celebrate each of their contributions and sacrifices, and to honor their passion, dedication, and service, which is a model for all of us. Let us take the time to consider, commemorate, and celebrate the unique military contributions that Indigenous peoples have made for Canada and continue making today. Let us thank them for their service. Merci pour votre service, lest we forget.
Thank you, Grace, for the land acknowledgement.
Please stand for our national anthem performed by our school band.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Thank you, Liad, for reading in Flanders fields.
Next, we have a short video about what Remembrance Day means to students.
I had a great uncle in the war, so Remembrance Day for me is just kind of remembering the sacrifice and bravery that he had in order to give me a good and secure future. I also recognize that there's people today that are still fighting all across the world just to keep that sense of security and peace.
To me, Remembrance Day means acknowledging and honoring the many people who put their lives at risk for our safety and freedom.
Remembrance Day is a day that I cherish and give the soldiers who currently fight to protect my rights and freedoms, thoughts, and prayers. I'm thankful for the soldiers who have sacrificed their lives to give me the life that I get to live today.
For me, Remembrance Day means recognizing soldiers, some as young as us, but to give their lives for the country and help make it what it is today.
We would like to invite Tegan and Liad to say a few words.
The 11th day of the 11th month. This is Remembrance Day in Canada. We gather at cenotaphs and memorials in more than 2,000 cities, towns, and villages throughout Canada. We stand with our hats off, our heads bowed, and we wear a poppy.
We participate in a simple but very moving ceremony to honor the many Canadian service personnel who have died in war and in other missions throughout the world. Canadians remember those who paid the supreme sacrifice in many ways. But what should the Remembrance Day ceremony mean to you today?
Perhaps the most important thing to remember is that many of those who were killed were not much older than you. In fact, some were even the same age as you, even though 18 years was the minimum age for enlistment.
Some of these men and women left high school and university classes to fly warplanes while still in their teens. Others stormed the beaches of Sicily, Italy, and France, or fought in the Battle of the Atlantic in tiny warships known as corvettes.
Many of them did not reach the age of 21 before they were killed in action, but their plans for the future were as bright as yours today. They left the excitement and promise of graduation, of sharing more good times at home with friends, to serve.
The war turned their world upside down. More than once in the last 100 years, generations of young Canadians were thrust into massive conflicts which threatened their way of life.
Thousands volunteered to serve in Canada's military, becoming sailors, soldiers, and Air Force personnel. They knew going into enlisting would probably put their lives at risk, but they went ahead anyways.
The reasons they cited for enlisting varied, but most of them did so because they were concerned for the future and the security of their way of life.
Today, most of us have been exposed to conflict or reports of conflict. The war in Afghanistan and Canada's involvement there has come alive on our TV screens and through internet videos.
The results of warfare is easily visible, but what's often missing in the storyline is how Canada has played an important role there, providing security and helping with nation-building initiatives.
It is also important to remember Canadian contributions in the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, the Gulf War, and other places. Remembrance Day is a time to honor those who paid the supreme sacrifice. It also gives us the opportunity to reflect on how we would feel if our whole pattern of life was threatened.
Would we have the courage to do what our grandfathers and grandmothers did? This is why it is important to wear the poppy and relate to those who left their homes, loved ones, and friends to fight for Canada, and to remember those who are serving today.
But above all, we must remember those who did not return.
We would like to introduce guest speaker Christopher Stobbs, a parent and active service member in the Canadian Armed Forces, who has volunteered to talk to us today. He will share some of his own experiences and represent many others who are unable to be with us today. We welcome him to our school with many thanks and appreciation.
Good morning, students and staff members of Jasper Place High School. It's truly an honor and privilege to take part in your Remembrance Day ceremony. My name is Major Christopher Stubbs, and I am a signals officer in the Canadian Army. I've been a member of the Canadian Armed Forces for over 18 years, with deployments to Afghanistan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Every Veterans Week, we pause to recognize, remember, and reflect on the service and sacrifices of our Canadian soldiers, sailors, aviators, and Special Forces members. We think of their courage, their character, and their conviction in defending Canada and the values we hold dear. We think about the 3,600 lives lost during the Battle of Vimy Ridge in World War I. We think about the 5,000 Canadian soldiers who took part in the Dieppe raid in World War II, who were wounded, taken prisoner, or killed. CAF members help protect our allies and partners around the world. We helped train thousands of Ukrainian security forces and significantly contributed to the NATO forces that rebuilt Afghanistan's government and education system in the 2000s. My proudest moments in my career include participating in the United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in 2018. We helped support their first democratic election in a long time and their fight to deal with the Ebola outbreak. I hope you'll take the opportunity to reflect on the role our military has played and continues to play in making Canada the country it is today. Lest we forget.
Every Remembrance Day, we lay wreaths for those who gave their lives to pursue peace and well-being. Here are some of our school's own, laying these wreaths in our outdoor classroom to show our school respect and vow to remember. There are 5 wreaths, each representing a group within our community. One for the Edmonton Public School Board and another for Jasper Place High School, recognizing both for affording us the opportunities to grow and learn into global citizens. The Edmonton Police Department for their work to protect and serve our communities. Finally, one for the Canadian military for their work abroad promoting peace on the global stage.
Please welcome some of the cadets in our school for the laying of the wreaths.
Pulse. Squatter right, turn.
At Jasper Place, we strive to prepare ourselves to play a role as responsible members of a larger global community. Remembrance Day is just one day where we collectively look into our hearts and join together in hopes that the world will one day experience peace. It has also become a time for us, the young, to learn about the past and present and think about the changes we can make in this world. After all, it is up to us.
We now ask that you stand for the performance of the last post by Jacob Gilbert, 2 minutes of silence and the reveille.
Squad remove headdress. Squad replace headdress. Squad stand at ease. Squad attention. Squad left, turn. Squad quick, march.
The poppies we wear as a symbol of our remembrance and sacrifice of others are not meant to be thrown out or discarded. Since they were introduced, the idea was that they would be placed on the grave of someone who served. Since we cannot all visit and place these poppies, we ask that you place them at the front of our school on your way out today. There will be a board for you to take your poppy with a tag to symbolize your respect for this day of remembrance. Thank you for your participation.
We would like to thank everybody for participating today and being part of this very special ceremony. An extra special thank you to our guest speakers, to our MCs, to all of our staff and students who have spent this time and looked at this recognition as a very special time for our school to spend a few moments reflecting on Remembrance Day and the importance of it. We are asking all of our classes to look at the links that were provided and spend some time writing letters to some of our people currently serving, as the voices that you have about the appreciation of the freedoms that we have are very special to share with those who are serving currently. My own dad was a veteran from World War II and shared many stories with me of his time and his connections, but also some of the atrocities that happened. And the biggest thing that he took away from the time is how important education is and the freedom to have this education that we take for granted. So once again, thank you all for creating this special time where we're able to reflect on how important our freedoms are and give thanks and recognition to those who have served, lest we forget.